Sorry guys if I sound a little under the weather. I got sick, I want to say sometime last week. I think it's the weather being hot, cold a little bit. Well, it's been really cold actually, but I think it's just it being extremely cold on top of having a lot of the moving around I had to do over the week. I don't know. I guess I didn't take proper care of myself and wound up getting sick again. But nonetheless, I want to stay consistent with this, like I've always been talking about. And welcome to Autosave. This is episode 5. Today, there's a few couple of topics that I want to talk about. I want to speak about the Marvel Rivals. Again, this time they had some major layoffs. We're gonna go into some suspected Rocksteady games that are coming that people were asking for and hoping for, that fans have been asking about. If you're into crossovers, we got a couple of crossover things coming on two in particular I want to talk about, and then I'm gonna finally have this big spooky segment. Today will be the first part of the horror aspect of the series, and what I'm gonna call it is is it did it happen or not, or something along those lines, because at the end of that story, when I finally go over it, I'm gonna pose a question to you guys, and you can let me know if this time frame is too long for an answer, but I'll give you the answer next video, whether the story I give you is fact or fiction, whether it's real or not real, you know. So let me get right into it. So recently, Marvel Rivals has had major success. If anybody's into video games, you know that people have been talking about this game like crazy. It was a free-to-play game made by NetEase, which was a company that worked very closely with the Overwatch group, and they wound up basically making their own version of the hero shooter genre, but using Marvel IP. Well, even with all the success and the massive amount of revenue that they've brought in, it looks like that NetEase has went over and laid off most of their staff. So this comes from the IGN site, written by Wesley Yin Poole. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. It's a great article. Go check it out. But in that same article, he talks about how Marvel Rivals was at 20 million downloads and still counting at the time that the article was written. And they basically laid off the entire Seattle staff, including the one of the directors. So the entire Seattle design team and the director got laid off. I think there was a post on LinkedIn that's mentioned in the article about how the director went on to, basically vouch for the staff there and try to see if they can get them work. Um, but yeah, it was it was pretty sad because the game. I mean, I've been super addicted to the game. You know, I've been really having a lot of fun. It's been really the primary game I've been playing. Even with the Legacy of Kane collection, and I purchased that, haven't come out. I've been playing like a lot of Marvel Rivals. Like I haven't played um, a game that had this much fun in it, and it's kind of stressful because you want to be good at it in a while. So I've been having tons of fun with it. They recently released Johnny Storm and The Thing into the game, so they have the entirety of Marvel's first family. Go figure, they were gonna release this group with the coming of the movie, but even with all that being said, it is still extremely sad to see so many people lose their job. I don't wish that upon anyone. Layoffs happen everywhere. It is corporate America, but there's a few reasons or assumptions that could be made why this happened. Because NetEase has, you know, uh, pulled back from a large number of their overseas investments from, the U.S., Japan, and they're probably just consolidating a lot of what they have once those design teams go ahead and create what's asked of them. So it's kind of like, I would say maybe it's like a contracted thing, but that's been going on with the video game industry for a little while now. It's been extremely volatile in its current state, and It's just sad to see. You never want people to lose their jobs. You never want to wish that upon people. Um, and it just sucks because it's hard. It's hard out here. It's hard to live out here. Everybody knows this. Um, it's super expensive. Things do not seem to be getting better anytime soon. And you kind of gotta like bust your butt twice as hard just to make ends meet, especially if you are taking care of a family. Um, but yeah, my hopes and prayers for all those people who lost their job goes out to them, and I really hope that they land on their feet and they're able to get a job. Something that'll help them take care of their families or take care of themselves. Uh, and in other news, it looks like Rocksteady is actually working on a Batman Beyond game, according to GameRant.com. It looks like there's been supposed leaks from a notable leaker. It's in the GameRant article. So if you want, go check that article out. But yeah, apparently that Rocksteady is making a new Batman game, and it's supposedly gonna be a Batman Beyond game, which I know who are fans which I know tons of people who are fans of that game and the game genre of the Batman Arkham series. When I say that, have been asking for this. And a lot of people have been wanting a Batman Beyond game. What's funny is I remember when the show was on WB11, it was fairly popular, but I don't think it was as popular as it has gained a cult following over time. And people love the Batman Beyond suit, the Terry suit, so that's another thing. But yeah, it's gained a cult following. People seem to love Batman Beyond, and it's pretty cool to see because I mean I liked the show as a kid. I used to watch it all the time. Remember they had that movie where Jason Todd had come to Joker again, something like that. He had to be stopped. I can't remember. I was so little, but yeah. So who knows? Maybe this is a return to form for Rocksteady, and they're making games because outside of the Batman VR game, a lot of the games that they've made have been kind of lackluster to fans. Like I think Justice League Kills the Suicide Squad. We don't even have to talk about that. Nobody asked for that game, and that game was not the greatest. It had a repetitive gameplay loop that was not fun and didn't tap into any of the characters' uniqueness, and they didn't respect any of the Justice League. So I don't know who asked for that game. It supposedly takes place in the Arkham universe, which is even worse with the way they did Batman, characters like Batman. Um, yeah, oof, not a great game. Or even Gotham Knights. I heard pretty poor things about that game. But yeah, according to the leaks also, and even in the article, I implore you to check it out. Like I always do, all the links to this stuff is going to be in the description. It would be a PlayStation exclusive if the leaks are real. So if the leaks are real, this is going to be a PlayStation exclusive game. Now, what does that mean? That means that unless you're a PlayStation user, you won't be playing this game, and it may eventually come to PC. But if it comes to PC, it's not going to come to PC until damn, it usually takes about a year or so for PlayStation games to come to PC, so you would have to wait. Um, Now, I don't know why they would want to limit the games to just PlayStation. Seems like an interesting choice, especially with how volatile, as we spoke about earlier with Marvel Rivals, even with success, there's a bunch of layoffs. Um, the gaming industry is, and how they may not make the money or the projections that these big gaming companies that they've become may be looking for or want. I can understand the Nintendo Switch because it is extremely dated hardware that needs to be updated, which is why we're getting the Switch 2 finally. But I heard about issues for developing with the Xbox Series S, so that's why it may not be coming. Series X, of course not, because in some ways it's stronger than the PlayStation. But the Series S, I heard there's been difficulties with making games for that in particular, and Xbox doesn't seem like they want to pull back from that either. Like they still want to continue to support their Series S console. But if you don't know, the Xbox Series X is like their high end. It's what the next gen console should be, and the Series S is like it is still a next gen console, but it's like a weaker version of the Series X. So for a cheaper price, of course. So that's really the selling point for that. Uh, so yeah, it's just an interesting choice. All you Batman Arkham fans, we may be getting this Beyond game, and it would be pretty sweet, right? I know it's been a long time coming. I have a couple of buddies who I'm really close with. I actually, one them who's a huge fan of the series came to visit me over the weekend. He had been asking for a Batman Beyond game for a while, so I can't wait to see his reaction to this. I probably do when I start doing reaction videos, reaction to this. And speaking of reaction videos, uh, in this next segment, I want to go ahead and take a look at this and maybe do like a mini reaction, because if you're super into crossovers, this is one of the things that are coming, which is if you're into trading card games, and specifically, it looks like Magic the Gathering has been crossing over with a lot of stuff, and one of them being Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I get this from Polygon.com, where they talk about uh, Avatar: The Last Airbender. If anybody's a fan of that, they're gonna be crossing over with Magic the Gathering, making cards. Recently Magic the Gathering crossed over with Final Fantasy. If you're a huge Final Fantasy fan, and made cards for their um, series. So let's see what this is like, and I'm excited to check it out. Yeah, so loud. Okay. Um. Okay, a whole lot shown there. I love the music and the kind of effects with the water, earth, wind, fire. My favorite character is Zuko, so if there's a cool Zuko card, I'll pick it up just to have for collection purposes. But it looked pretty cool, and like I said, I actually need to see if I want to pick up some of those Final Fantasy cards, because I'm a fan of that too. If you watch, I think episode 2, where I talked a little bit about myself, uh, in that episode, you'll see that I talk about how much I like uh, um, Final Fantasy. But I didn't get to watch it as much. I did see bits and pieces. I got to finish the series mostly. But I did really like Avatar. Wasn't like a super fan, but I did like it. My favorite character had always been Zuko. I loved his story with the inner conflict with himself and wanting to prove himself. It's really awesome character, really well written. So yeah, um, that's big on a crossover. Now there's another crossover that I recently found out. I didn't have things ready in my doc, but it looks like there's been a lot of interest from Marvel and DC Comics to cross over. It's been reported on Twitter and X multiple times. If you just look it up, like I said, I didn't have anything ready for this. It looks like on both Twitter and X, there's been talks of Marvel and DC crossing over for at least 10 comics. Now, I think this comes off the heels with Marvel, DC starting to gain rise in popularity, especially with the Superman trailer. I think last time I checked, it was at like 53 million views, the Superman trailer. Um, Marvel seems to be starting to gain momentum. I mean, not Marvel, my apologies, DC, while Marvel seems to be losing momentum. And, it's kind of crazy how the shift is happening with a lot of major setbacks from Marvel, with a lot of negative press they've gotten, and some of their projects not being received as well as anything prior to Endgame, with the big momentum building to Endgame. So yeah, I'm not surprised that this happened. Marvel doesn't seem to have the leverage that they once had years ago, even with Disney's backing. So, like I said, I want all comic book companies to succeed. I don't pick one or the other. My favorite comic book characters are Superman, Spider-Man. I know primary colors, but and when I say Spider-Man, I mean Peter Parker. But uh, you know, I'm hopeful that, comic books go back to what they were, and without, not what they were, because, not to say that they were these amazing things from way back when, because there have been some real dumb comic books that were released that would not be well received today, especially with the way the climate of today is. But what I mean by that is, like, comic books just being just that, comic books, not anything where, there's like corporate monetization involved where it needs to make $300 billion in order to be successful. And I also want some humility back from these companies, and I feel like that's the problem with Marvel. They got too big for their bridges in some ways, and they lost the humbleness of where they came from or where they started. And DC had to fall to experience that, to now start to rise up. So um, I'm excited to see what what happens, and what these comic books are going to be about. I think it's going to be super awesome and really cool. The last time that I remember a crossover was JLA versus the Avengers. That was the last crossover I remember from years ago. And I know they had the Amalgam comics before that, and they had the Justice League. I mean, Marvel versus DC comics, where they had like these really short comic book stories that led into this whole huge conflict. But they had these real short comic book stories where they Marvel and DC put out these presses, and they were like, all right, who wins? And fans had to vote who would win per fights. But yeah, um, it'd be cool. I hope some of this is canon. They kind of hinted at it in Doomsday Clock and for DC Rebirth. If anybody ever read that, it's probably one of the greatest stories ever written by Jeff Johns, with the artist for the Watchmen comics, slipping my name, I'm slipping my brain, but amazing story. I love it. And they kind of hinted at crossovers coming, so I'm not surprised if this is true. And like I said, we haven't had one in a while. I think the very first crossover was Superman Spider-Man crossover. Funny enough, from way back in the day, way back. Like I wasn't even thought of, but yeah, I'm super excited and can't wait to see what happens. I'll try to include some links to the from X and Twitter where I was getting this info. But yeah, I wasn't prepared to even talk about this because this came to my forefront over the weekend, so I didn't really have anything written down or a doc to go over. But now, hold on tight for the next set of the podcast, because we're gonna get into, did it happen or did it not happen? My fact and fiction segment for the spooky story. This is gonna be. I just want to fully provide a disclaimer for this. This is gonna be a very graphic story. So, not. I'm gonna try not to get into too much details, but I promise this will be horror. So that's what this story is gonna be. So if you do not like horror, or you don't like spooky or scary stuff, please feel free to not check out this last part. And like I said, I try to have the cuts in, so I just want to put that disclaimer out there. I don't want to give anybody a heart attack or scary. It's my first time doing it, but all right. Without further ado, let's get right into it. This story starts back in 1965 with a man by the name of Charles Rogers, a man who served in World War II, had a degree in nuclear physics, and spent a decade working for Shell Oil as a seismologist. Upon returning home to live with his parents after the war, no one knew if he still had a job anymore, because he was never the same. He didn't speak to anyone, rarely communicating to friends and family, and he would leave home before dawn and return after dark. He would only communicate with his parents via written notes slid under their door. But Charles Rogers, going from a war veteran, having a degree in nuclear physics, and spending a decade working as a seismologist, would be the prime suspect in his own parents' killing. On the evening of June 23rd, the police were called to investigate the home of an elderly couple by a concerned neighbor. When the officers arrived, their knock was met with no answer. The police made their way to the back of the house, where they found flower pots obstructing the door. When the officers went inside, one officer, upon examining inside the house, stated nothing felt right. He made his way to the refrigerator and opened it. In the drawer, they found 2 severed heads, both from the elderly couple. The packaged meat that they initially thought was hog meat or some form of cooking meat were body parts of the elderly couple. Upon investigating, all signs pointed to the only man who had access to the home at the time, Charles Rogers. There was blood on the keyhole, and Charles Rogers was nowhere to be found. I ended off with this. Did this really happen? Or is this a fake story? You gotta tell me if this is fact or fiction. Leave a comment below. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll save this point. You need to have an answer by the time we pick up on autosave episode 6, so I can tell you whether this story was real or a figment of my imagination.